Hey, what's up guys? Edison from Collectibles here, and this is a pretty serious video, like pretty serious topic, so I just want to kind of get right into it. So yeah, this is a recent PSA sub that I just got back, and I'm pretty confident PSA damaged at least these cards that I picked out, and probably even more if I were to go through and kind of comb over the submission a little bit more meticulously and pull out. These were the stuff that stood out to me right away, so I wanted to go over it. Now, the first card here is a pretty big one. It's the Hex Maniac Full Art from Best of XY. Now, looking at it right away, Mint 9, pretty solid grade. You know, when you send off cards, you don't, I think you say that a 9 to a 10 is a pretty respectable grade. Obviously, 10 is you're kind of high rolling. That's what you want to hit. That's like the ideal grade for one of these Japanese newer cards, new back cards. And obviously, there is a huge price difference between the 9 and the 10. And why I put this card at the top and why this video is titled the way that it is that in a PSA 10, this card is around the $10,000 mark. I would say on average, it sells for around $10,000 in a PSA 10. And in a PSA 9, it's quite the drop off. We're looking at around $2,000 to $2,500. The front on these cards have always looked good to me. All the cards that have the same damage, the front looks fine. You don't notice anything. But the moment you flip the card around, look at that top right corner. Quite frankly, it's fucked. And I can guarantee to you that was not this card when I sent it in. This was not how the card looked when I sent it in. And another thing you might say is, well, how do you know that maybe you just didn't miss it, Edison? Oh, you've handled all these cards. Maybe you just didn't, something slipped by. To me, I scan some of the higher end cards too, so I have before scans. But now what PSA also does is they have scans when you send the card out to them. So I actually have the photos provided by PSA to their graders of what the card looks like when they get it in hand. And I'm going to throw it up right now. Just look at the back. I'm going to zoom in the top right corner. This wear is not there for how severe this is. That's bullshit. That is not on the card when it was sent in for me to PSA. It didn't happen in transit because PSA even scanned it when it came out the box and it's not on it. So some part in the grading process at PSA, my top right corner is getting nicked and mangled and it's pulling the card down to a 9. And I want to preface this. I do not care if this card got a 9 on its own. If this card just got a 9 as is, as how I sent it in, that's fine. I would accept the grade and I would sell it as is. My issue is the Gem Mint or Mint Plus card that I'm sending in, especially at this dollar value, is getting mangled at the grading process of PSA. They're not notifying you that this is happening, that your card is getting damaged, and they're just assigning these grades and moving on like nothing happened. And what's incredibly frustrating about this card in particular was I received an upcharge email that some of the cards in the submission that I sent off at this tier were coming back at a valuation higher than the tier limit. That's normal. It's happened to me a bunch in the past, and I've always just accepted it, paid the upcharges, and moved on. This card came back the 9. I saw the 9. They wanted to upcharge me $200 to grade this card in 9. First off, I think $200 to grade this card is too much. I also told that to the PSA rep when they emailed me about it, that based off of recent sales, that wouldn't make sense. That would put it at around 10% of the market price of the card just to grade it. That's insane. That makes no sense to be like that. So the person I spoke to eventually just agreed. She pulled up recent sales and we agreed that $150 was a little bit more fair, which to me still $150 to grade a card is a lot of money. But regardless, that is just their process. You pay the upcharge when it's out of the value tier. I understand that. But what is so fucking frustrating about this is I paid $150 to get this card graded just for them to fucking damage the card. And now the issue you run into is I reached out to PSA. I already filed a report about this card being damaged, and I have even more cards that I want to now report to them from the submission. But they agreed that the valuation of the card is at least $2,500 based off of my correspondence there. So I'm really hoping that they will, when they eventually if we are able to reach some settlement, they will recognize that I spoke to someone at PSA and I paid an upcharge assuming that this card was $2,500 of value, that I believe I should be compensated towards that value. If that happens to one card in a submission, you'd be pissed. And if it happens to a card that goes from $2,000 to $10,000 based off of this issue, you'd be really pissed. And then you look at this card. Next up, we have the Gengar EX Full Art from Phantom Gate. This came back in 9, and I knew there was a little bit of edge wear on the back, so I didn't think much of it. I just assumed, okay, it came back in 9. That's kind of what I was sending in, expecting it to receive. But when I actually pulled it out of the box, so I didn't think to grab the before scans of this. But when I pulled it out of the box, I decided to flip it over just for fun. And we see, it's that top right corner that got the most fucked again on this card. And I think this was a 9 regardless, so this doesn't matter as much in terms of value, but it does matter for the card itself. And then we go here, Heatran EX Full Art from Spiral Force. That top right corner is absolutely mangled. And lo and behold, it comes back a PSA 9. And again, I got this card in a 9. I decided to look at the before scans. I'll throw them up here. Look at that. The top right corner in the before scans don't show that type of wear. Aegis/EX Full Art, 2 of them from Best of XY. Fronts look okay, maybe a little off-center. Oh, you flip the back over. The most insane edge wear you've ever seen in the back right corner. And I handle a lot of cards, so I know to look for this stuff. And every card that I send off, I take them out when I receive them. I re-sleeve them. I put them in their card savers. And before I send them off to PSA, I re-go through every single card of a submission before I send it off. I would have noticed this wear. I'm not noticing it before I send it off. It doesn't show up on any of the scans that PSA sends me when they initially get my package. I come back, it gets a 9 like all these other cards with the same damage. Aegis/EX. I sent 2 of them at once, back to back. Would you look at that? The top right corner is completely mangled, and it pulled a 9. And the other thing that's very strange to me is that I have a lot of PSA cards, man. I've graded a lot of PSA 9s. 90% of my PSA 9s do not have, I would say 99% of my PSA 9s do not have anywhere as severe as what's coming up on these cards. Seismitoad EX Rising Fist Full Art. I sent off a bunch of these recently. Every single copy has gotten PSA 10 that I have inspected and sent off. This one comes back a 9. That raises some red flags, but you know, sometimes you get unlucky, the centering is bad, whatever. You flip it over, the top right corner is fucked. My other point too is these cards are not 9s. They would not give these cards 9s if you sent them in raw like this. I can almost guarantee it. If you cracked this out and sent it in raw, you'd probably be lucky to get an 8. Advent of Arceus, Hollow. These are not expensive cards. These 2 cards right here, Ghastly and Arceus. Not nearly as expensive as the Full Arts. But the value doesn't matter. It's the fact that these cards are all getting damaged in their process. Top right corner pulls a 9, and this is the trend. They just slap a 9. It gets damaged in their grading process. They slap a 9 on it, and they just ship it off. They don't mention to you at all that your card is damaged by them. They never even say anything. They just hope that you don't look at what your cards are coming back as. Ghastly. Rest of the card doesn't have any edge wear, except this top right corner somehow was the only spot that has anything wrong with it. Maybe it's a fluke, except we have a stack, and we have the proof. We have the scans from PSA initially, because they show you what the card looks like when they get it, and it's not there. And it comes back. They're all the same grade with the damage in the same spot. It's so frustrating because it's so clear. Magerna, just a really nice card. I sent this in because I thought it had a chance at a 10. It probably did have a chance at a 10, except that top right corner is completely destroyed. Manectric from Expansion Pack, a 20-year-old card. It survived 20 years, absolutely fine. I sent it in the PSA for 2 months, and somehow the top right corner is destroyed. Garatina level X and a 9. This is a good grade in the card if this is the grade it deserved. I believe this card had a chance at a 10. At a 10, we're looking at like $1,000 card. Even in a 9, it's still pretty pricey. But the issue isn't, I keep repeating this, but the issue isn't exactly the grade that it's coming back. It's the fact that it's always the same thing. It's that type right-hand corner that is consistently damaged throughout all these examples. They're not notifying you that they're damaging your cards, so you just have to accept them when they come back that way. And not only that, like in the case with this Hex Maniac, they charged me $150 extra. They wanted to charge me $200 extra to grade a card that they knowingly fucked up. That to me is complete bullshit, and I really wish that compensation is one thing, but it's also like they have to get this shit together. This is the second sub. I made a video about this a couple months ago where I just had a random spree of 9s in my submission, and every single 9 in that sub was the same thing. I'll have the video linked. where exact same corner, exact same thing. And I had people comment on that video. That's a common thing. And you go on YouTube and you search PSA damaged my card, Pokemon card, and you see YouTube videos of people talking about PSA damaging the same way. Then you go on like blowout cards, which is like a sports card forum. People talk about the same thing there. They're getting PSA subs back where the cards are all damaged in the same exact spot. So to me, it's a rampant issue at PSA that they're not only not addressing, they're actively trying to cover up. And the only person that, like, it's screwing over both the collectors and buyers of the cards, because the cards that they're getting back in nines are not actually nines. They're both damaged and they're not examples that would uphold to PSA standards for the grade. And they're screwing over the sellers and the dealers that work with them because they're just damaging the products that they're sending in to be certified. So yeah, sorry for the ramble, but this is obviously an incredibly frustrating event. And I will have a folder up linked below where you can see my high-res, high DPI, good contrast scans of every single one of these cards so you can inspect the damage yourself. And if this has ever happened to you in a PSA sub, please let me know. And yeah, I'm sorry for getting so worked up about this, but obviously this is a pretty fucked situation. All right, well, try to stay positive, and I guess have a nice one, guys.